They say cats can't write letters, but I've been watching you write yours for 12 years now, Vivian, scratching carefully with your blue pen on those cream-colored pages you keep in the desk drawer. So perhaps I've learned a thing or two about how to say goodbye properly. I never meant to leave without warning. That last morning, when you placed my favorite cushion near the eastern window, where the early light spills across the living room floor, I wanted to tell you how perfectly you understood, that I needed to feel the warmth one more time, needed to watch the dust motes dance in the sunbeams like tiny constellations. Instead, I could only press my head against your palm, hoping my purr might translate all the words caught in my throat. There are things I should have told you. Things a cat keeps to himself, tucked behind whiskers and hidden in slow blinks. But now that I've crossed that threshold all living things must eventually cross, I find myself with the strange ability to say everything I couldn't before. And you deserve to hear it all, especially the parts I kept hidden. Do you remember the day we met? October 17th, 2011. You tell people you found me, but between us, Vivian, I think we both know I found you. The Oakwood County Animal Shelter smelled of disinfectant and fear. I'd been there for almost 4 months, longer than most. The staff had started calling me the Sentinel because I would sit perfectly still at the front of my cage, watching, waiting. They thought I was evaluating potential adopters, but the truth is, I was looking for something specific. Someone specific, though I couldn't have told you who. You weren't supposed to be there that day. You told Marjorie at the front desk you'd only come to drop off some old towels and blankets, a donation, after clearing out your sister Helen's apartment following her move to assisted living. You hadn't owned a pet since Rusty, your childhood retriever, passed when you were 14. Just not an animal person anymore, you said with that polite smile that didn't reach your eyes. But then the heating system kicked on, blowing your scent toward me. Lavender hand cream and Earl Grey tea and something else. Something like loneliness, if loneliness had a smell. Like an empty house with too many echoes. When you walked past my cage, I reached out. One paw extending through the bars, silent but insistent. Not batting or playing, reaching, connecting. You stopped mid-sentence during Marjorie's tour. Our eyes met and I saw something shift in yours. Recognition, perhaps. You've always dismissed it as a coincidence that you paused at my cage specifically, but I knew better. I had been waiting for you. This one doesn't usually care for strangers, Marjorie said, surprised. 7-year-old male, owner surrender, been here quite a while. You tilted your head, studying me. What's his name? The previous owners called him Shadow, but he doesn't respond to it. That's not right, you said quietly, almost to yourself. He's not a shadow of anything. When you reached out, your fingers trembling slightly, I pressed my forehead against them. You gasped, just a small intake of breath, and I knew I had found what I was looking for. I don't need a cat, you told Marjorie, even as you signed the adoption papers. I'm 65 and set in my ways. This is probably a terrible idea. Then why are you adopting him? Marjorie asked, genuinely curious. You looked at me, then back at her. Because he needs someone to write to. That first night in your house, our house, on Mockingbird Lane, you set up my bed in the laundry room. Just until we get used to each other, you explained, arranging my blanket just so. But at 3 in the morning, when I heard you crying in your bedroom, I nudged the door open, it was never fully latched, and jumped onto your bed. You weren't startled. You simply made room beside you, and I curled against your back, my purr a quiet motor in the darkness. My husband used to sleep on that side, you whispered. 42 years. He's been gone for 3 now. I kneaded the quilt gently. I named the other cats I've had. But I think you already have a name, don't you? One I just don't know yet. From then on, you just called me Cat, as if waiting for my real name to reveal itself. I appreciated that more than you knew. Names are important, Vivian. They should fit just right. Those first months together, we developed our routines. You would wake at 6:15, make coffee in the percolator that hissed and bubbled like a living thing, and read the newspaper at the kitchen table. I would sit in the windowsill above the sink, watching the chickadees and tufted titmice at the feeder you maintained with religious dedication. Then you would walk to your desk in the sunroom, where you wrote letters to your sister Helen, to your grown daughters in Seattle and Boston, to old friends scattered across the country like seeds blown from a dandelion. People don't write letters anymore, you would tell me as you licked stamps. But how else do you really say what matters? Email is too fast. No time to think. No time to feel the weight of words. I learned about you through those letters, Vivian. I learned that you had taught high school English for 37 years before retiring, that your husband Marshall had been a civil engineer who could name every bridge in New England and tell you when it was built, that your youngest daughter Teresa hadn't spoken to you for nearly 2 years after a disagreement about her choice of partner, but was slowly finding her way back, that you collected vintage buttons and kept them in mason jars arranged by color on your bedroom windowsill. One afternoon in early spring, about 6 months after I'd come to live with you, you received a package. Inside was a bronze wind chime with 5 hollow tubes that made a sound like distant cathedral bells. The card read, "For your porch. The empty nest shouldn't be silent. Love, Teresa." You hung it that same day, and when the breeze came through, you sat on the wicker chair with your hands folded in your lap, just listening. I jumped up beside you, and you stroked my head absently. "I think I finally know your name," you said. "It's Vesper." I purred my approval. Vesper, an evening prayer, a whisper at twilight. It fit. Vesper, you repeated, trying it out. My evening companion. That was the moment, Vivian. The moment I knew we weren't just sharing a house, we were sharing a life. Our days fell into comfortable patterns. You would garden in the mornings while I supervised from the shade of the hydrangea bushes. Afternoons were for reading, you in your armchair by the eastern window, me on the cushion beside you. If the book was particularly good, you would read passages aloud, your voice rising and falling with the rhythm of the sentences. "Listen to this, Vesper," you'd say, and then recite something about love or loss or the quality of light in autumn. I always listened, even when I appeared to be sleeping. I stored those words away like treasures, but it wasn't all peaceful coexistence and literary appreciation. We had our disagreements too, like my insistence on sleeping on top of your knitting projects, no matter how many times you shooed me away. Or your stubborn refusal to acknowledge that the red dot from your laser pointer was, in fact, an enemy that needed to be vanquished, not just a toy for my amusement. And then there was the incident with the cardinal nest in the lilac bush outside the kitchen window. You were furious when I managed to slip out the door one afternoon and climb up to investigate. I didn't harm the eggs, I was merely curious, but you didn't speak to me for hours afterward, your disappointment a palpable thing hanging in the air between us. That evening, you sat on the back steps with a cup of tea, watching the mother cardinal return nervously to her nest. "I know you're just following your nature," you said without looking at me, "but sometimes nature can be cruel, and I've seen enough cruelty in this world." I sat beside you then, not touching, just present. Eventually, you sighed and scratched behind my ears. "I suppose we all have our instincts," you conceded, "even old English teachers." From then on, whenever I showed too much interest in the birds at the feeder, you would distract me with the catnip mouse you kept in the drawer specifically for that purpose. Compromise, another lesson in our shared life. The seasons turned, Vivian. Winters, when we huddled under the quilt your mother had made for your wedding, listening to the radiator click and groan. Springs, when you would bring cuttings of lilac and forsythia inside, filling the house with their scent. Summers, when the ceiling fans spun lazily overhead and you would read on the porch until the fireflies emerged. Autumns, when the maple at the edge of the yard blazed orange and red, and you would rake the fallen leaves into piles that crackled satisfyingly underfoot. And through it all, you wrote your letters. To Helen, whose memory was beginning to fade like a photograph left too long in sunlight. To Teresa, who had finally brought her partner Diane to visit one Thanksgiving, and the awkwardness had melted over pumpkin pie and coffee. To Margaret, your oldest friend, who was battling cancer with what you called stubborn grace. In my 9th year with you, your hand began to tremble slightly when you wrote. Just a small shake at first, barely noticeable, but by winter you had switched from your beloved fountain pen to felt-tipped markers that required less precision. You never mentioned it, but I saw the frustration in your eyes when you had to cross out a word rendered illegible by the tremor. That was the winter Dr. Levinson prescribed the pills that you kept in a weekly organizer on the kitchen counter. The winter you started taking afternoon naps, something you had always dismissed as a waste of perfectly good daylight. The winter you began to forget small things, where you'd left your reading glasses, whether you'd fed me that morning, the name of the author you'd been reading the week before. I adjusted my routines to match your new ones. When you would wake disoriented from your nap, I would be there, a familiar presence in a moment of confusion. When you couldn't remember if you'd given me breakfast, I would sit patiently by my empty bowl, even if I'd already eaten. When you called me Shadow once, the name I'd never been, I rubbed against your ankles until you corrected yourself. Embarrassed. Vesper, you'd say firmly. You're my Vesper. On your 70th birthday, Teresa and Diane drove down from Boston. They brought a cake and a new set of wind chimes, these made of sea glass that caught the light like hard candy. You sat in the sunroom while they cleaned the kitchen, insisting you relax on your special day. How's the cat? I heard Teresa ask as she rinsed dishes. Vesper, he's slowing down a bit. Arthritis, the vet says, but he still keeps me company. You know, Mum, we worry about you out here by yourself. You laughed. I'm not by myself. I have Vesper. That's not the same as having a person, Teresa said gently. No, you agreed after a moment, but sometimes it's better. Later, after they'd gone, you sat on the porch with me in your lap, listening to the new wind chimes. They want me to sell the house, you told me, stroking my fur. Move to one of those senior communities in Cambridge, near Teresa, or to assisted, living with Helen. I kneaded your thigh gently, claws carefully sheathed. But this is our home, you whispered, and I promised Marshall I'd look after it. We stayed, of course. You were too stubborn to leave, and I was too stubborn to let you face it alone. But changes came whether we invited them or not. The tremor in your hand grew worse. You started using your computer to write emails instead of letters, though you complained about the impersonal nature of it. No one will save these in a box to read years later, you told me, as you pecked slowly at the keyboard. No one will trace their fingers over the words and remember the touch of my hand. You hired a neighborhood boy, Parker, to mow the lawn and do the heavier garden work. You installed handrails in the shower and beside the toilet. You switched from tea in your delicate porcelain cups to coffee in a heavy ceramic mug that wouldn't break if dropped. And I grew older too, Vivian. My leaps to the windowsill became more measured, less graceful. The glossy black of my coat dulled, white hairs appearing around my muzzle like frost on morning grass. My naps grew longer, deeper. One morning, when the pain in my joints was particularly sharp, you found me struggling to climb onto the sofa. "Oh, Vesper," you said, lifting me gently. "We're quite the pair, aren't we? Both of us creaking along." You took me to Dr. Rivera that same day. I didn't even protest the carrier. I didn't have the energy. She examined me carefully, her hands gentle but thorough. "Arthritis, certainly," she told you. "But I'm also concerned about his kidneys. The blood work from his last visit showed early signs of failure. It's common in older cats." "What can we do?" you asked, your voice steady, though your hand on my carrier trembled. "Special food, medication to make him comfortable. But Vivian, Dr. Rivera hesitated. He's 14 now. We can manage his condition, but we can't cure it. You nodded, absorbing this, so we adjust our expectations. Yes, focus on quality of life. On the drive home, you were quiet. At a red light, you reached into the carrier to stroke my head. We'll be okay, Vesper. We'll figure it out together. And we did, Vivian. You learned to give me pills hidden in soft treats. You bought a small set of carpeted stairs so I could still reach my favorite windowsill. You moved my water bowl to multiple locations around the house so I would never have to go far to drink. When I began to lose weight despite the special food, you would sit on the floor beside me, encouraging me to eat just a little more, a little more. Please, Vesper, you would whisper, just a bit for me. I ate what I could to ease your worry, but we both knew what was happening. Last winter was the hardest. The cold settled into my bones like it had taken up permanent residence. Even your heated throw blanket couldn't chase it away completely. You kept the house warmer than you preferred, wearing light sweaters indoors while I sought out every available sunbeam. One evening in January, during a rare snowfall that hushed the world outside our windows, you carried me to the sofa and sat with me on your lap, stroking my fur while we watched the flakes drift down in the glow of the porch light. I need to tell you something, you said softly. The doctor says I should consider moving to assisted living. My blood pressure is too high, and she's worried about me managing the house, especially with my hands the way they are now. I looked up at you, blinking slowly. I told her I couldn't possibly leave you. Your voice caught. But I think maybe you'll be leaving me soon. I pressed my head against your chest, feeling your heartbeat, strong but uneven like mine. We've had a good run, haven't we, old friend? 12 years. Almost 13. I purred in response, though it took effort. My purr had grown raspy in recent months, like an old engine struggling to turn over. I don't regret a single day, you whispered. Not one. As winter mellowed into spring, I spent most of my time on the cushion by the eastern window. You rearranged the furniture so you could sit near me while you read or worked on your jigsaw puzzles. Sometimes, when you thought I was sleeping, I would catch you watching me, your eyes bright with unshed tears. I wished I could tell you not to be sad, that the years we'd shared were more than enough, that before you I had never known what it meant to belong completely to someone and to have them belong to me in return. Instead, I would open my eyes and meet your gaze, blinking slowly, a cat's "I love you," and you would blink back, understanding. The morning of my last day dawned clear and warm, a perfect April day, with magnolias blooming and robins singing in the elm tree outside your bedroom window. You opened all the windows to let in the fresh air, and the breeze carried the scent of damp earth and new growth. I was very tired. When you offered me food, I turned away. When you tried to give me my medicine, I gently resisted. You didn't force it. Instead, you called Dr. Rivera. "I think it's time," I heard you say, your voice steady, though your hand gripped the phone so tightly your knuckles whitened. "Can you come to the house? I don't want to move him." While you waited, you carried me to the porch and sat in the wicker chair, cradling me in your lap. The wind chimes, both sets, played their gentle melody in the breeze. "Remember when Teresa and Diane visited last fall?" you said, stroking my fur. "Teresa took that picture of us sitting right here. She said we looked exactly alike, both of us staring off into the middle distance, contemplating great mysteries." I purred weakly. "I'm having it framed. It'll go on the mantel, next to the one of Marshall at Lake Champlain." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the chimes and the birds and the distant sound of Parker's lawnmower 2 houses down. "I want you to know," you said finally, your voice dropping to a whisper, "that you saved me, Vesper. After Marshall died, I was just existing, not living, and then you reached your paw through those cage bars and pulled me back into the world. I looked up at you, wishing I could tell you that it was mutual, that you had given me purpose when I thought my life was over, that the quiet dignity with which you faced each day, the losses, the changes, the disappointments, had taught me how to age with grace. Dr. Rivera arrived an hour later. She sat with us on the porch first, explaining everything that would happen. You nodded, asked a few questions, your hand never stopping its gentle stroke along my side. When it was time, you carried me to my cushion by the eastern window. Dr. Rivera spread a soft blanket beneath me, and you sat on the floor beside us, your face level with mine. "I'll be right here," you promised, your voice breaking at last. "Right here with you." As the medicine entered my veins, I felt a profound peace settle over me. The pain that had become my constant companion receded like an outgoing tide. I looked at you, my person, my Vivian, and tried to memorize every detail. The silver of your hair in the afternoon light, the constellation of freckles across the bridge of your nose, the gentle hands that had cared for me all these years. In my last moments, I thought I heard you whisper, "Thank you for choosing me, Vesper, for finding me when I was lost." And then I was gone. Now, somehow, I find myself able to tell you all the things a cat cannot say with purrs and slow blinks. To tell you that you were right, I did choose you, that when I reached through those cage bars, I recognized something in you that matched something in me. A solitary nature, a watchful patience, a capacity for devotion that ran bone deep. In the days since I've been gone, I've watched you grieve. I've seen you leave my cushion in the eastern window, untouched. I've noticed how you still step around the spot where my water bowl used to be, though you've put it away. How you wake in the night and reach instinctively for the space at the foot of your bed where I used to sleep. Yesterday, Teresa called. She asked if you'd thought more about the assisted living facility near her. You told her you were considering it. "The house feels different now," you said. "Too quiet." After you hung up, you sat at your desk and took out a sheet of your cream-colored stationery. For the first time in months, you uncapped your fountain pen. Your hand trembled, but you persisted. "Dear Vesper," you wrote, and then stopped, uncertain how to continue a letter to someone who was never supposed to read it. "Let me help you, Vivian. Let me tell you what I would write back. I would tell you that it's okay to go. That houses are just walls and windows, but home is the feeling you carry inside you. I would tell you that change isn't always loss. Sometimes it's just change, and within it might be new discoveries, new companions, new sunbeams to bask in. I would tell you that when you talk to me in the quiet moments, and you do, I've heard you, I am listening. Not in the way of ghosts or spirits, but in the way of memory and love, which are their own kind of magic. I would tell you that when the wind chimes ring on a still day, it isn't me, it's just the wind. But perhaps you could choose to believe it's my way of saying hello, of reminding you that love doesn't vanish, it just changes form. I would tell you that when you feel something brush against your ankles in the dark, it's probably just the hem of your nightgown. But it's also okay to whisper, "Good night, Vesper," just in case. Most of all, I would tell you that you made my life complete. That in your quiet house on Mockingbird Lane, with your letters and your books and your wind chimes, you gave me exactly what every living thing hopes for, someone who sees them completely and loves them anyway. So finish your letter, Vivian. Cap your pen. Pack your buttons in their mason jars. Take Teresa's offer and move closer to her. Bring the photograph of us on the porch and the cushion from the eastern window if you want to, or leave them behind if that feels right. Whatever you choose, know this: you are not alone. You never were. And in some way, in the particular quality of light on an April morning, in the sound of wind through leaves, in the small, ordinary moments of beauty that make up a life, I am still with you. Always your Vesper.